No slippers? Sorry?
It was not me.
Oh, you're not on the group chat.
I am. I think the girl is somewhere in the back.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, most wonderful good afternoon on this glorious Friday. I guess you probably think, what the hell am I doing here with such lovely sunshine? So I've decided to try it as short as possible. And oh, that's interesting. We've got things the wrong way around. Never mind. I was wondering whether I should wear my slippers to that lecture. But then I thought, no, better not. I also decided not to bring in any vodka or so, as was mentioned in the group chat, because, you never know how people might perceive that. So what I want to do with you today is quickly whiz through the practical that we are going to do next week. A what? I better not ask. Quickly whiz through the practical. The practical is going to be technically incredibly basic, right? Because, and guys, if you post, please do me a favor. Don't totally take the piss. We are still waiting for a lot of money from the person who, so we will open a collection box. Anyway, the practical is very, very basic. All you need to do is practice your pipetting skills. And trust me, you will need them, because in week 8, you are going to have an assessed practical where you need to demonstrate that you can do accurate and precise pipetting, right? Because, let's face it, this is what we are doing in the lab on a day-to-day basis. And if you can't trust your pipetting, then I'm terribly sorry, I can't trust you at all. This is a life skill, right? Pipetting. And you need to be able to do that. So I was talking about precision and accuracy, and that is also then the main part of the practical, because you need to do a few calculations. Those of you who had a look at the practical manual already see that these calculations are not terribly taxing, but I know that there are always a few people who, as soon as they see numbers, they freeze. Sort of a massive adrenaline rush through the body, and it's the the fight and flight response. And people go totally, there are numbers and there are symbols and I don't want to know about them. And if I don't look at them, I can't see them. And if I can't see them, then they can't see me, and therefore they don't exist. And that's not a good position to be in. So what I want to discuss with you is the practical very briefly, and then discuss also precision and accuracy. And that's what we are going to discuss. But first of all, what are you going to do in this practical? As I said, it's terribly simple. You are first, you will get a few tubes. And they are the 4 milliliter plastic tubes. Good. Make sure it's shut up. And what you do with these tubes is, obviously, you label them appropriately. And so you have basically what's the matter with this stupid microphone, huh? Aha. Now that's better, huh? So you label them, you have 3 tubes that you label A with A. So you've got A1, A2, A3. You have the same with B, B1, B2, B3. And, surprise, surprise, the same with C, C1, C2, C3. And what was that? Oh. And in the first, and you weigh all the tubes and record their weight, ideally with lid. That's very important. You have to weigh the tubes without anything in it. And then, once you've recorded that, you use one of these long plastic graduated pipettes. I think Rosalind has, Dr. Masterton, sorry, has showed you how to use these pipettes, has she? Yeah, graduated pipettes, and also with this squishy ball thingy. Yeah, has she shown you that? Yeah. Fantastic. So what you do is you add 1 milliliter of pure water to all the A tubes. Two milliliter to all the B tubes. And 3 milliliter to all the C tubes. So you basically have 9 tubes in front of you. 3 contain 1 milliliter, 3 contain 2 milliliter, and 3 contain 3 milliliters. And then you weigh these tubes again and record their weight. Right? Pretty straightforward. And what you do is you then record how much these tubes actually weigh again. So you have, let's say, A1. You have weight empty. Weight with 1 milliliter, right? And you calculate what is the weight in grams that this 1 milliliter of water actually weighs. And the instructions are, I think, also in the manual, quite at length built up. Okay? Pretty simple. And you do that with all the A tubes, with all the B tubes, with all the C tubes. And hopefully you get a nice table for that. Now you're also going to use these automatic pipettes. And I think everybody had a play around with these, right? Don't forget, if you want to suck it up, press it down to the first pressure point only, and then slowly release. If you want to get rid of the stuff in the pipette tip, and never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, use a pipette without a pipette tip. This is like doing things without a condom. Right? Only the consequences are far more devastating. You have been warned. So always have the right pipette tip on it. And you can tell the color of the pipette tips from the color of the dot on the plunger. On the plunger. So if it's blue, you need to use blue tips. If it's yellow, you need to use yellow tips. If it's white, I leave that up to you to figure that out. Yeah, right. Only Magnum tips will do. No, you would have to use the small white ones as well, you know. If you have a white dot on your knob from the pipette, then okay. So never do it without a pipette tip. Right. Completely lost where I was. Anyway, you use these automatic pipette tips and you use smaller volumes, and instead of these plastic tubes, you use what is lovingly called an epi. They are Eppendorf tubes, and they are plastic tubes which can hold about 1.5 milliliter, and they look a little bit like. Now it gets interesting with my drawing skills. Like that, and they have a lid. Yeah, they are usually white, see-through, 1.5 milliliters, and there are loads of these Eppendorf tubes. And what you do again is you have A, B, C. You have 1, 2, 3. The first one, in the A tubes, you add 0.2 milliliters, 0.4 milliliter, and 1 milliliter. Or here, 200 microliter, that's the same, 400 and 1,000 microliter. But before you add the water, you have to weigh the Eppendorf tubes empty again and write down the weight of the empty tubes. Then you add the water. Make sure that you are as precise as possible. And then you weigh them again. And from the difference with water minus without water, you can calculate how much water in grams you have added. Pretty straightforward. Yeah? So not terribly demanding and difficult. That's all there is to the practical aspect. So why is there a 3-hour practical allocated for that? Surely you can do that fairly quickly. The reason for that oops, it's not what I wanted. The reason for that is that you need to do some calculations with that stuff. And in the first place, we want to see how precise our data actually are. So we use the tool of precision. And precision just simply means we compare the data with each other. So compare the data with each other. So, for example, we have the A tubes with the 1 milliliter. And we measure for these A tubes, we measure a weight of the water So weight with water minus weight without water. We measure that as 1.0 grams, 0.9 grams, and 1.1 grams. Right? So that would be our three measurements. Is there a variability? Is there a spread in the data? Do they vary from each other? Yes. Yeah? So there is a variability in these data. And this variability can be caused by a lot of things. For example, your pipette isn't working properly. Or you have a bad day wearing slippers. Or had too much vodka. You know, then the level of the liquid is sort of whee. All sorts of things can lead to this variability. Sometimes there's not a lot we can do. Sometimes we can do something about it because we could repeat the experiment. And in a case like that, we actually should probably repeat the experiment because it's cheap and it can be done very quickly. Of course, what we can do is we can first of all calculate what is the average, what is the mean of this data. Yes, you are famous, Andrea. What is the mean of these data? And you all have learned way before your GCSE how to calculate the mean. You add up all the numbers and divide it by the number of observations. So in this case, it would be 1.0 plus 0.9 plus 1.1, all in grams, divided by 3, and that gives us, what does that give us? 1. 1.0 gram. That is the average. Now, what we do is we simply treat our data, these 3 data points that we have, we treat that like this is the data, this is all the data in the world that we can get from this experiment. So we treat these data as a population of our data. So we call this population mean. And when we talk about a population, we usually speak about the... Somebody's phoning. The parameters of the population. It's very easy to remember. Parameter of the population. Don't do that if somebody is sitting in front of you. Right? Parameter population. And usually parameters of populations are abbreviated with Greek symbols. In this case, population parameter is abbreviated as mu. Mu means population parameter. It also means micro, but in statistical context, it's parameter for a population mean. So in this case, our mu, our population mean is 1.0. When we talk about mean, then this is also called a measure of central tendency, quite frequently referred to. The mean is not the only measure of central tendency that we can do. So let me write that down again. There is another measure of central tendency, which is called the median. It doesn't have a particular abbreviation, population abbreviation or something like that. In the median, what you do is you just use the middle value. So in this case, what you do is basically you order your data according to size, so 0.1, 1, and 1.1, and you try to figure out what is the middle number. So in this case, it's very easy. It's 1. Right? So in this case, we have the mean and the median are exactly the same. Doesn't have to be. So for example, we measure our tubes. We get 1 gram, 2 gram, and 60 gram in the same experiment. Right? Now you think, whoops, something went a little bit wrong here, right? It seems obvious that something is not right. So what would you get for the population mean if you look at that? Quick calculation. Sorry? 40 or 50? So 1 plus 2 plus 60 divided by 3, that would be 21. Yep, thank you. So you would get 21 gram as the measure of central tendency. What would you get with the median? With the median, you would get the middle one, 2. Which one is more reliable? The median. Well, you would think so, wouldn't you? But actually, you don't know where you made the mistake. It could be that you messed up 2 measurements, namely the small ones, or you messed up the big one. In this case, highly recommended repeat the experiment. What it shows you, however, is something quite interesting. The mean is very sensitive to any what is called an outlier. So we would probably call this an outlier. That doesn't fit the bill here. So the mean is sensitive to an outlier. The median doesn't care about outliers. Yeah? Therefore, sometimes it is absolutely justified to use the median instead of the mean. We had it so easy because we had only 3 numbers. But what if we have 4 numbers? So let's say we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. What would be the population mean? 225. So how did you do that? You added them all up and divided by 4. So you had 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. That gives 10. Is that right? And 10 divided by 4 gives us 2.5?
Oh, 2.5. Yeah.
2.5. Yeah? 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6, plus 4 is 10. 10 divided by 4, no, you're absolutely right, 2.25. Ha! 2.5. God. We make a mess here, huh? 2.5. You are so convincing. It's incredible. 2.5. Right? What is the median? If it was 3, it would be easy, right? But with 4, actually what we do in this case is we just say, in order to get the median, what I usually do is I do that on the left and on the right, eliminate the numbers and work my way into the middle. So I've got 2 and 3 left, and in this case the definition is that the median is the mean between 2 and 3. So between 2 and 3, 2 plus 3 divided by 2, and that is 2.5. So that would be the median as well. Okay? Does that make sense? What was the comment? Couldn't see that. So right now. Good. So that's the measure of central tendency. There's another thing that we need to have a look at, and that is the measure of dispersion. And in this measure of dispersion, what we are looking at is how far our data are spread out. So let's say we have 1, 2, and 3. And from this we calculate. Okay, yeah, Charlie, I want to see that. So what's the mean? 1, 2, and 3. So mean is 6. No, 2. So the mean is 2. And for the measure of central tendency, we just simply take each data point and subtract the mean from it. So we have here 1 minus 2, 2 minus 2, 3 minus 2. And then we add them all up. Don't write it down for the time being, because I'm making a deliberate mistake here, right? Wait if you write it down. So, what is 1 minus 2? Negative 1. 2 minus 2? 3 minus 2. Fantastic. Now let's add them all up. Gives us 0. Now this would actually indicate that there is no variation in the numbers. Measure of dispersion tells us what is the variation between the numbers. We say there is 0. That means there is no variation. All numbers are the same. Hey, wait a moment. 1, 2, and 3, they are all the same? I don't think so. So, wait a moment. It's probably not such a clever trick to just add them together. What you actually need to do in this case is you need to make the numbers positive. How do you make a number positive? You ignore the negative sign. Yeah, that is what my wife does with the bank account. I've seen such a lovely pair of shoes. Yeah. Oh, no, there is no... What does this dash in front of a number actually? We get rid of that, you know. That's, we buy it just simply... No. The best way to deal with that, to make a number positive, you square it. So, what you do, minus 1 squared. 2 minus 2, 0 squared. 3 minus 2, 1 squared. Now you add them all up. What do you get? 2. And you actually say, I get 2 out of 3 measurements. So for the measure of dispersion, you divide it then by the number of observations. So for a population, and this is actually called the population variance. For population variance is actually abbreviated with squiggle, or mathematicians actually call it just sigma square. But don't worry, you can also call it variance. Sometimes it's abbreviated VAR. Don't worry too much about that. And the way you deal with variance is you take, for each data point, the difference from the mean. So x1 minus the mean. You square it plus x2 minus the mean squared plus x3 minus the mean squared. And so on and so forth. And then you divide it by the number of the observation that you have. So if you have n observations, you divide it by n. And mathematically written is the variance equals the sum, and that is the sum symbol, the sum of xi minus mu squared divided by n. That is the population. And sometimes people don't like it as variance because the problem with the variance is it sort of abuses the unit of the whole thing. So if we've got for our first x1, if we have x1 equals 1 gram, and for the mu we have 2 grams, what would be x1 minus mu squared? What would that be? One? What? Gram. There was a question mark behind this squared. It is, of course it is squared. Yeah? It's 1 gram squared, because we have to put the units in there in this bracket as well, right? And people don't like units being squared. That's a bad thing, really bad. Ugh. Squared unit, no way. And therefore, people said, actually, can we actually take just simply the square root of the variance? Or when we look at our beautiful equation, xi minus mu squared divided by n, we just simply take the square root of that. And this thing gets rid of the unit squared. Because if you take the square root of a unit squared, you just simply get the unit back. And if that was too fast for you, just think about it again. And this has, again, a particular name. This is called the standard variation. And for a population, the abbreviation for standard variation is sigma. It's the squiggle. Now you understand why variance is sigma squared. It's just simply standard variation to the power of 2. Okay? Are you happy with that? So, what we are going to do in the practical, as I said, we standard deviation. Yes, thank you. Standard variation, standard deviation. Thank you very much for the comment. That's good that at least one of us is awake. It's not me, I know that. I had a bit of an incident last night with the dog. It's the curious incident of the dog in the night. For those of you who read the book. But it wasn't as dramatic, it is just the dog had beef. And when he has beef, he has wind. And oh boy, I can tell you that you still feel, I can still feel the taste on the tongue when he, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So standard deviation. Yes, the dog is okay, thank you. I wasn't. So standard deviation, I apologize. So what we are going to do in the practical is we measure. So we do, let's say, 1.0 0.9, and 1.1. So what's the mean? 1.0, that's the mean. Let's say gram. Can we calculate the population variance of that? What's the variance? So it would be 1.0 minus 1.0. Let's do that by hand. Plus 0.9 minus 1.0. Oops. Squared plus 1.1 minus 1.0 also squared, divided by 3. So here we have 0 squared plus 0.1 squared plus probably negative 0.1, but it doesn't matter, plus 0.1 squared divided by 3. 0.1 times 0.1 gives us 0.01. Are we still seeing that? Yes, we still see that. So that would be 0.01 plus 0.01 plus 0 divided by 3, and that gives us 0.02 divided by 3. Have I made a mistake? I hope not. Are you happy with that? Yeah? And now I can do the standard deviation. And that would be 0.02 divided by 3 square root. That gives me an indication how wide the data are separated from each other. How would I plot this? How do I make that visible? If you've got only 3 data points, the best way to make this visible is to plot the 3 data points on top of each other. So if we've got, for example, 1.1, 1.0, 0.9, we would probably plot that like that. That is called a normal dot plot. Right? Simple dot plot. Connection lost. Thank you. Okay, in this case, I think we do a premature break. Yeah. Back in 7.5 minutes. And we continue with calculation, and I try to get this sorted.
I actually did maths at A-level. Is there going to be any chemistry today?
Nope.
Or is it just going to be like
Just
standard
that.
deviation, statistics, that sort of
Have
stuff?
a lovely afternoon.
Thank you. I might not leave. I might stay.
Huh?
I might not leave. I might stay.
Entirely up to you.
Is this just statistical stuff today?
Yeah.
Because we done statistics A level, is it?
Enjoy the afternoon.
Is
In
this,
the
is
sun.
this just like standard deviation, variance?
You would need to calculate the standard error of the mean. Can't do that. Margin of error. Yeah, and the upper and lower band for a sample mean.
But we're not doing student t-test today?
No.
Okay. Because I'm not too sure about that.